Hey everybody, we are teaching Tilt Brush, and this teaching Tilt Brush is all about color, mixing color in your tilt brush, which is using a system called RGB, which is a little different from what we're used to in the real world when we're dealing with color. So we're first going to talk about color in the real world and arrange it on the color wheel. Then we're going to look at color in RGB in the headset and how it's different and how you can use that in your artwork. So in the real world, without the headset, when you look at an object and see its color, like my black shirt, the light is reflected off my shirt into your eyes. Reflected light, reflected color. This is an additive kind of color. So when I've got color and I mix them together, the colors get deeper, the colors get darker. If I add less pigment, less ink, less color, then the colors get paler. This is the real world situation. So when I start painting in real world color, let's say I have a bright blue. In the real world, the main colors are blue, red, and yellow. Red, yellow, blue are what are called the primary colors of reflected light, light you see in the real world. With these three, we can mix them to make any shade. So red and yellow, for example, will mix together to give you different shades of orange. The more red, the darker, the more red, the more yellow, etc. So blue plus yellow are different shades of green. If I mix blue and red pigments together, we're going to get various shades of purple, from plum to magenta and everywhere in between, depending on how much we add. Now in the real world, not the headset, as we add more and more colors together, the colors get deeper, darker, and as you add all of them together, they also get muddier. So we actually end up with a really dark brown sort of color when you mix them all together. And I'm going to do a couple different shades here so you can see what I'm talking about. And on the different backgrounds, if we were in the real world, you can see how mixing these colors together gives you a very dark result. And if I took color away, it would be a very pale color as you move outward. So mixing them more together gets deeper, darker, muddier. This is all in the real world. Unfortunately, here in Tilt Brush, we're not in the real world. We've got our wonderful fake environment here. And while these colors exist, this isn't how they're going to react here. Especially if you've seen episodes like where we're working with smoke. Instead of getting deeper and darker the more smoke we add, it gets brighter and brighter and more intense. Unlike the real world, here in Tilt Brush, we're working with light, projected light, not reflected light, but being projected out of a screen in front of our face, or screens like a television. Theater, with their spotlights, projected light works this same way. And instead of going red, yellow, blue, RGB, the system for electronics and projected light. R, I'm actually going to switch to a transparent color here. R is still red. G for green instead of yellow. And then B for blue. So instead of the red, yellow, blue that we have in the real world, we're going to be using this red, green, blue in our system here. It's a little bit different. Whereas red and yellow would make orange normally, here red plus green makes shades of yellow, tinting towards orange up here, tinting towards a yellow into green down here. Red plus blue does still equal purple, and all the shades of purple therein. Blue plus green, we use the term cyan. Some people call it aqua or teal. Teal's a little more green. But this is the color wheel in your headset, projected light, as opposed to the color wheel set in the real world. Another difference is since we're adding light here, if you start adding more and more of these colors together, instead of getting a darker, blacker color, you'll notice we start getting brighter and brighter. And as you mix these colors together, instead of getting black, we're getting a bright white. since we're adding more light, the way the colors mix is the opposite. Projected instead of reflected. So if we have less color here, then we're going to get the darker colors on the outside. Brighter colors the more we mix them. So it is sort of opposite to what we're used to in the real world, because we're used to reflected as opposed to projected light. Anybody who's worked with theater knows how those spotlights, colors, films in your spotlights will affect the colors on stage. Now, because we're projected light, it's actually very difficult to add black to make it darker. So even if I go for the really darkest color here, if I paint it down, you can still see it almost like a glow because we're adding that color. Even if I switch to the white background, now you can just barely see that glow. It's even paler because we're adding more light to those locations. Switch back to our original. There are a few ways to add black. For example, a solid opaque paint will actually paint black on top of it, covering it up. But there's no way to do a dark smoke, for example, a fog effect. Because if I'm adding any of these transparent brushes, it's adding more light wherever I do it. So I can't do a veil of smoke between me and this thing. Even the blackest of blackest smoke that I use is still adding more light. So now let's switch to smoke. It's still adding light. So you can see anywhere I add the smoke is actually getting paler and brighter. So there's how we're working with color. I'm going to do the final example to really show how these things blend. I'm going to switch to one of our transparent brushes, and with our bright red, let's make it as bright as we can. There we go. Now I'm going to cross it with a bright blue. So you can see where it mixes does indeed still turn purple. And the more I paint back and forth, you can see I'm overdoing the blue there a little bit. So let's not overdo it, but just spread it out a little. There we go, some blue. Now when we add the green, where the green crosses the red, it's going to turn yellow. Where the green crosses the blue, it turns cyan. And hopefully our middle section turns pretty much white because of all the colors blending. So here's your visual example of mixing colors in RGB. This used to be part of the old TV test and things because it's mixing colors. Red plus green makes yellow. Blue plus green makes cyan. Mix them all together and you got white. Very different from the real world, but still very useful for when you are going to be creating color and mixing these things as part of your paintings. I'd love to see what sort of stuff you do. This is hopefully helping, giving you inspiring to make you do different type of rainbow effects and bright effects. Here's an example of using the solid paint versus a transparent paint. The transparents let you blend. Solid paints are just going to paint right on top of each other. So experiment, have fun with it. Let us know what you come up with. Let me get that out of the way so I can do our usual message. Thanks for joining us. We do this all the time and are always coming up with new lessons. So go ahead and subscribe so you know when the next one comes out, usually every week. We do them live on Twitch TV/Shameless Mayhem, and they're all archived on YouTube.com/Shameless Mayhem. I hope this one was helpful for you guys. Let us know in the comments if you have more questions or if there's other things that you would like to learn more about. Thanks everyone. Have fun.